Happy Father's Day, everybody. What's the deal with carburetors? I'm getting a lot of questions, so make this shorter video into a longer video. Let's get into this questions I'm getting about routing and hoses and all those dangling things on that carburetor, the mysteries of the carburetor. So, hey guys, I get a lot of questions on the CH150, which is the Honda Elite. A lot of people come asking me about the carburetor and all the hoses and crap they say. And I assume they're talking California emissions, which is what I got too. But let's take a look at it. This is the service manual. You can Google this, and I was able to get this for free online. CH150 service manual, and I just saved the whole thing because even if you don't know what you're doing, it's good to have. You know, you can always share it with somebody. So this is basically your system. I don't know if this is going to help, but this is your air cleaner. Goes with your carburetor, your engine, and this maybe is what they're talking about too, this crankcase ventilation. So that's the engine. You have hoses coming out. It goes to a catch can, which basically separates oil from vapors. And it's recycled back into the engine. This hangs down, this piece here, by the kickstand, I believe. And that's a breather separator. That's also, separating oil and crankcase ventilation, basically. It's all emissions. You know, you can't be dumping. Years ago, this would go right to the road. In 30s and 40s, cars just dump oil into the road. So now we gotta recycle that. We can't have any, especially on motorcycles. You don't want anybody crashing. So that's probably not what people wanted to know. They wanted to know more about fuel tank, and we're getting there. We're getting there. Bear with me. Carburetor, air cleaner. There's a purge valve, a charcoal canister, and a fuel tank. Again, this is all for emissions. I think this covers all models, not even everything across the country. Every car has a charcoal canister, and what that does is the top of the tank, fuel vapors come out, go into that charcoal, absorbs fumes. That's the beauties of charcoal, and it is recycled back through this valve, which a purge valve is basically, it opens on demand and it goes back into the engine. So it's basically recycling of vapors and fuel. And they're showing the engine down here. This also has a drain on it, probably for excessive fuel. I'm guessing that dumps in the street, but it probably never, that's just something's, probably if there's a problem. Irregardless, so yeah, purge valve there's a little valve. I think it's mounted next to the tank, if I remember right. And then there's a vacuum hose to that, so the air cleaner, vacuum hose to the air intake. So that's providing vacuum to open that valve. But again, there's nothing off the carburetor yet, which is what people keep asking me. So let's get into California emissions. Emission label, it's on the gas tank. So here's what I got. I have an 85 and after 85. The only difference I see is they put a big, thick PCV hose, and that stands for positive crankcase ventilation. So again, emissions. So the only thing I see that confuses people is down here on the carburetor. So you have, this is your inlet, fuel petcock. So it's inlet. Again, it's not showing where on the carburetor it goes, but it's on that passenger side because this is the front. And the only other is a vacuum. Anything that's in a snorkel like that, it's providing suction vacuum. So that's a vacuum to open up that valve. And that's another, that's that PCV, positive. Is that one we looked at in the other picture? That might be the one we were looking at in the other picture. And then, so there's only 1, 2, There might be another vacuum hose. Let's go over to the... Yeah, there may be another vacuum hose without getting out there and looking at it, but that's basically it, really. I'm getting into oiling system, yeah. So, I don't know, you guys keep asking me all those hoses, and there's not really a lot of hoses on mine. California should have more than anybody else, because I don't think anyone else would have any of this stuff. In, you know, California's pretty strict on emissions. So, I guess we'll keep that as a short. We're at 5 minutes here. Hope that helps somebody and answers your questions. I'll just hold on these, you know, without going out there and taking off my covers. I probably should do that. Maybe I'll add that to this video and show you exactly what we're talking about. What I'm going to do is get all the panels off for you guys, and I've done videos on that, but bolts here, a nut here, bolt here, bolt back here, take the bumper off, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to take off both sides so we can get right in there. And I'm guessing people are, mine doesn't say, oh yeah, probably says over here, California emissions. That's all the issues that I think questions are on, because I have all this extra stuff on mine, being California, which is the new norm for everything. Well, I might as well start from scratch, because nobody wants to go back and watch videos, so. First screw, right here, bam. Just one with the washer on it. There's 2 Phillips up here. Find my screwdriver. Or one on each side, one here and one on the other side. And that's for this front piece, which, yeah, you do have to take it off. You do. Sometimes I take the seat right off, too. So that's going to be those. Behind here is just clips. You in frame? You're in frame. So that. Let's get back there. This is where I think we only need a Phillips and a regular, really. Next up is the 2 Phillips, so we can take this bumper off. Then we need to get to a screw here. Pops off. And there's our other screw here. It's like a 13 millimeter or a flathead screwdriver, I think is what it is. You put you back on the tripod. Alright, and then it should just come off. There's a little slip up underneath there like that. Same with these guys over here. You can see that. Yeah! See, it's just these little tabs that hold it in. Back there you got your tail lights, or your turn signal. There you are, bullet connectors, we call those. Okay. Red and white. There's a cover. And we're getting in there to emissions and carburetor stuff, but we're going to get the rest of this off. There are 2 down the bottom here. I don't remember. Does that have to come off? Yeah, I guess that 10 millimeter on each side. And that'll take this whole thing off. Why? Because that's a cup holder. That's the best thing you can buy on Amazon. Get your coffee, not your beer. That would be illegal. I'm going to take these 2 seat bolts out too. Just, like I said, the seat is just in the way. There we go. Now look at all that room. A lot of room we got. Alright, that's going to come up. Off. Again, there's side panels hook in there. 2 bolts at the bottom. I don't think that. No, that just curves around and something down there. We're getting there. She's almost stripped. Let's get to the other side. And I should reiterate, when I say people always ask me, I mean you guys, I mean this is great. Thanks for asking about this stuff, because that's shows that the information is not out there, and I can gladly provide it. Because that's what the world should be about, sharing information. Google will tell you that. I think they share everything. Steal it. Don't do that. Not till these break. Alright, she's looking stripped, right? Yeah, I mean that. Thanks, guys. Thanks for asking questions. And, you know, I'm on my own time here providing this. I'm not getting paid. But that's what I'm here for. Aren't we all? So I guess, yeah, if you were a novice, you would look in here and see all these hoses and say, what is all this crap? That is a good point. I'm going to take this off. That's our inlet. I'm going to really get in here. I want to really show you what we're looking at. If you're going to own a scooter or carburetor, you really do need to know how to clean carburetors because they always get dirty. And the reason they always get dirty is because people leave gas in them. The worst thing you can do is leave gas in a carburetor or not run it, you know, store it for the winter. You got to empty it. You can use fuel stabilizer. That stuff works great. But yeah, that's the biggest issue that happens with these things. And cars too. I mean, you gotta store things properly. Alright, so that's our air intake coming from our air inbox here. It's got a hose on the bottom. Another little breather hose, we'll call it. What's it do? What are we doing? That's just a separate, that might be just for, again, for any fuel or oil to drain back and be recycled through the air box. Because it's at the lowest point, you know. That's the only thing that would make sense because there's no vacuum to it. I mean, there's a vacuum, there's a suction going into the engine. But anywho, all right, let's get in here a little bit. Let's see if I can get some light. I'm gonna zoom out here because we're on the left-hand side, we call driver's side. First thing I see is this was part of our air hose, that thing we just took off. So that you don't have to worry about. That was there. See if I get this lens in there. First thing I see is I'm missing a hose. You may see down here. Yeah, this is my bowl drain. There's usually a hose that goes straight down. You'll probably see it hang down underneath your scooter. That's just like a drain if your float sticks or something is an issue in the carburetor. Fuel will flow out of there. Or when you're servicing it, you drain the bowl. Now I have this hose here. This is part of my California emissions. It's coming off the carburetor, looping down, coming up the frame. There's that diagram I showed you guys earlier. And then it's going into that purge valve, charcoal canister. And this is going back into the engine, this hose. Or back into the airbox, I'm sorry, yeah, looks like it goes back in the airbox. Alright, and then off of that purge valve you get some lines. This line going up to that fuel tank. This is your fuel sending unit, that's electrical. So one line, that was that one we just showed, okay? Make a sense, and then you got this, not in the lens, this loop hose here that goes from intake, so that's providing vacuum, because there's anything in a intake like that, it's providing vacuum. And it's going up to where my light is. No way. Where's the lens on it? There we go. It's going up. Sorry. It's going up to this diaphragm on the carburetor. So that's just a loop. You don't even have to worry about it. I mean, make sure the hose is in good shape. These crack too. These hoses here, that'll give you lots of drivability issue. But those are available online, aftermarket. Check your eBay sources. And then we come over our front. Throttle cable coming in. There's another one of those roundy round hoses going to the carburetor. Looks like it's going to the closest one. Let me get the light back in there for you guys. Yeah, right in front of Come on, camera lens, get in there. Ah, there we go. Yeah, right here, right in front of, so right top of the throttle adjustment screw, right there. That's your idle. And then right behind that idle screw is a little hose. It just dumps out too. That's a vent. So it needs a vent air. Everything needs a vent. Anything mechanical that does anything needs a vent. There's your intake of your carburetor. And this is your bowl gasket. That's mine was leaking. You can see the gasket I didn't have, so I used a liquid. Seems to be holding up just fine. And that's the bottom of your bowl. There's a screw there to drain it, and it'll come out that thing I was telling you about earlier. All right, let's get on the other side. All right, over to the old passenger side, we're going to call it. Even though this is no passenger, this is a motorcycle or a scooter. So underneath here, my other video, I just did a fuel filter. So the petcock is under here, comes in, put this inline fuel filter, comes down, and I lost it in the lens. There it is. It goes into your carburetor right here. Okay, come around for you folks. It's the biggest hose because that's your feed. And think about it, see where it's going? It's going to the bowl. Where's the bowl? Bowl's just a little mini fuel tank. So from your fuel tank, you gotta fill that bowl. I'll show you another analogy of a carburetor here in a minute. Okay, so that out of the way, there is another vacuum doohickey up here, it looks like. It's another one of those circles, U-shaped hoses. It goes from one part of the carb to another part of the carb. And it's this valve here, which has an electrical connector to it. That's part of the engine though. Is that what it's going to? So that, it's obviously feeding vacuum to this is what it's doing. So that hose is like providing vacuum to this device, which is probably part of my emissions. Dumping. So it might be a temp gauge actually for the engine temperature. An idiot, I forgot. Those are cooling lines. Somebody did mention, yeah, coolant lines go through their carburetor. It was funny, when I was out there, I didn't see them, but now it makes sense. That's a thermosensor, that wire we're talking about. So coolant comes out of the thermostat housing, goes through the carburetor, and probably out that other hose. And that's for warming up the carburetor, basically, I believe, to get it up to temperature. So two of those loop lines that I was saying were vacuum are actually coolant. So, okay. Not to sound like an idiot, but I checked myself. Not 100% right now, but let's see. What else are we looking at? Oh, it got really dark. There we go. This hose is, again, part of that crankcase breather separate. So engine's mechanical, it's pumping oil, making pressure. You need to vent that pressure. That's going to be part of that. This stuff, again, emissions. That is another dump. See, this is part of that oil separator. If I unscrew that, a little bit of oil probably will drip out. But the idea is, this is the separator, I think, liquid oil from vapors. And basically it settles here. This is a separator part of it as well. And the idea is again, you don't want to dump it in the street, so they recycle it back into the engine. So it's probably pressure coming out, and this one is probably vacuum. Yeah, this back one is vacuum, and it's going over back into the engine. Or no, that's the one going to the airbox actually. So all that pressure is building up, oil pressure, anything extra goes back into the intake. That intake snorkel had that too, then it goes right back into the engine. So again, all emissions components. Let's see if I'm missing it. I hope this is helping somebody, and it's hard to do all this without taking the whole thing apart. But so above your fuel is this vacuum one. That might be a question too. That's a vacuum. Goes to the carburetor. There's a T in there. If you can see where it goes. It goes Right there. It's that little diaphragm on top of, I think we were looking at that on the side of the carburetor. But that's your vacuum. What it is this petcock, fuel petcock, will not flow fuel. It stops when the engine's off. As soon as the engine's cranking and vacuum starts, that's when it flows fuel. So that's a nice safety feature is what it is. And so that vacuum is for that. And there's two hoses in there. One goes there and one's that other. We were on the other side. It's that loop, but you'll see it. There's a little diaphragm there. Another thing is, I guess that electric, that's your choke basically, that electrical, let's see if I can get this like vacuum. This guy right here, the big electric thing that sticks in your carburetor, that's your choke basically. It's a high idle. That's how your high idle is achieved. It applies power to it, and as it warms up, you'll notice your idle comes down. But those you can buy, they're replaceable. I've done one on this. It's pretty common to fail, I think. So that's like something you can buy. What else? What else? I think that covers all the hoses people were concerned about, I guess. A lot of them are just vents and, you know, circles. Circling back to this, that. They're all doohickeys. They're doing things. But if you don't have California emissions, you probably don't have this stuff. Maybe they would even have this, but maybe not the other stuff on the other side. But yeah, let me show you inside the house how what a carburetor is and how it works. Will it run? That's always a big question, isn't it? Oh, have to turn the switch on. And the idle comes down. There it is. That's that electric choke thing I was talking about. Once that turns off, the idle comes down. My idle might be a little low. But yeah, there you go. Last but not least, this is your final carburetor lesson. This is a carburetor. Air, your air intake is here. Your fuel bowl is here. You mix the two together, flush it into the engine. All right, you'll never look at a toilet the same. It's the same principle, air and water mixed into the drain in this situation, but in your engine, it's air and fuel mixed, flushed, for layman's terms, into the engine. It's actually atomized into mist and blah, 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 blah. All right, maybe I should title this, You'll Never Sit on the Throne Again, and think of it as a toilet.